So,
Okay.
everybody, this is Ed Cooper. He is from the Saints and the Aints and everything in between. Thank you for talking to us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
So, let's talk about the Saints and their legacy and how much of that is connected to Triple Z. So, how much of that is connected to Triple Z and, you know, did they help kickstart or not quite at first?
Um, well, the Saints started before Triple Z did,
Yeah.
um, though we were initially called Kid Galahad and the Eternals, and we had a problem getting anything work-wise. Brisbane was a pretty sewn-up city in terms, or town really, in terms of what you could do musically. You either had um, the kind of John Hind agency, which
Hmm.
ran most of the local bands, and that was a very specific kind of uh, thing that you were requested to do, which was basically go out, dress in the fashions of the day and play the top songs of the day as closely as you could.
Yeah.
And the Saints had nothing in common with any of those people. So we
Hmm.
never got any work on that sort of circuit. So we generally would either just play at each other's houses, or when we saved up a bit of money, would hire a community hall, an RSL hall. In those
Yeah.
days, they weren't difficult to access, and they weren't expensive. So we did that. We probably went through, half of the halls in Brisbane
Yeah.
in that way, and never really got into a situation where we could go back to them, because we'd always be refused reuse of the hall after we did it. But not I think
Hmm.
it was just sort of noise complaints, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We got surprisingly little harassment from the cops, which I always put down to the fact that there wasn't. I mean, I put it down to the fact in hindsight that there just wasn't anything connected with us. It was years before punk became a
Mm.
tabloid thing,
Yeah.
which those bands that came after us copped it, but we had very little run in. Triple Z came along in '75 from memory,
Yep.
and I mean, it was of interest. I remember listening to the station, and it was it was more mainstream than I thought. There was a lot of Bruce Springsteen. I mean,
Yep.
and Bob Seger.
Yep.
You know, those
Yep.
kind of characters. So I was, I thought I didn't actually think that much about it at all, to tell you
Hmm.
the truth. It was an avenue to to for people to express. I think politically,
Mm.
uh, Triple Z would have been, um, much needed. Musically, it was pretty much the sort of mainstream stuff that you'd
Hmm.
hear at parties that you'd crash. You
Yep.
know, so nothing exciting for me in that regard. We did do a show at the Queensland University swimming pool. I don't remember exactly what it was pertaining to, but it had something to do with Triple Z,
Hmm.
and we had a really hostile reaction from the audience, and a lot of fights broke out.
Oh.
And so we were sort of banned after that. And I
Yep.
think that sort of lasted for a couple of years. And then sometime, I'd left Brisbane by that stage. And
Hmm.
so I wasn't really keeping up with what was sort of going on in local student politics or anything like that. And something changed, and there was a new bunch of people, and the radio
Hmm.
station has been incredibly supportive of everything I've been involved in ever since, sort of thing. So that is great. No hard feelings, folks.
Yes, that's it. And they're happy enough to have you along for their birthday celebration. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, they probably, look the other way or stop talking when I come into the room, but who knows?
I'm sure they don't. Um, so yeah, so it's kind of like so a lot of I'm looking back through some of the Triple Z sort of weekly, playlists. You as in your, I guess, various forms of
Mm,
solo acts have featured fairly significantly. So they've grown to love you, and I guess because you are, considered a local, um,
mm.
growing out in
Well,
the West.
hopefully they like the music. I mean, that
Yes.
is always. I've never kind of been a flag waver or anything like that.
Yeah,
But yeah, support your local talent, local, you know,
absolutely.
tradie, all that sort of thing. I'm good with that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, hopefully it's not just because they feel sorry for me.
I'm sure they don't feel sorry for it. I think you've put out an amazing catalogue of music over the years. Um, and I'm sure they're more than happy to play it because it's good. So playing Z50, that's going to be, I'm guessing that over the years you've probably heard of some of the market days and the shenanigans that Triple Z got up to. It's probably going to be a lot more sedate these days because of insurance and all of those things that go along with it now. But what do you think's going like what's your expectations of the day?
Well, I expect the insurance companies to be standing at the gates handing out, really good quality drugs and things to keep everybody nice and sedate.
Like some
That's what I'm
Valium or
looking for.
something? Yeah.
No, I was thinking something more imaginative, but anyway.
Yeah. But yeah, so and the lineup's incredible.
Hmm.
I think that Paul Curtis has done an amazing job pulling this all together. Um,
Yeah,
so
Paul's a top bloke.
I
I like Paul.
I will agree with you there. And you're having Mark Arm along to have a bit of a sing for you again.
Hmm.
So how did
Yeah,
that
it's
come about?
it's it, it it's the same lineup that we
Yep.
that toured last year. Yeah,
Yep.
and the Triple Z show is the only Australian show that we're doing. So
That's
um,
incredible.
yeah, we
Uh,
won't. Like if you look at the rest of the tour, we
mhm.
were starting in New Zealand, sort of thing. But
Yep.
this kind of got added in, and yeah, it'd be good to do it.
Yeah. So how did the Mark Arm come into doing that?
Oh well, um, I was looking for a singer, and we kind of got a list together, and Mark Arm wasn't on it, and a mutual friend, a guy that sort of has worked as my tour manager and has tour managed Mudhoney, suggested Mark because he's a real fan of the band and he's got a
Hmm.
great voice, and I thought, well, that makes absolute sense because he's got his own style, but I think tonally kind of fits in with the stuff that we're doing very well.
Hmm.
So yeah, he was suggested, and we got in touch with him,
Hmm.
and he was really keen, and that's how we did it.
He's an incredible
You know,
front
he
man. Mhm.
yeah, I think he's a real sweetheart to work with too.
Mm, yeah, I've as I'm a photographer by trade, so
Mhm.
um I've photographed Mudhoney several times, and it is generally their gigs are one of the most enjoyable gigs to photograph because they're so
Mhm.
conscious of those little photographers running around in front of them, but also they're so interactive with that audience. So
Mhm.
he's such a great band to see. So you said you're touring, so you're going around, so you're starting in New Zealand. So where do you
Yeah.
head off to next?
Then to Los Angeles. Then we go through. We do San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, uh, Toronto. I can't remember everywhere. Then we go
Mm.
down to New York and Washington, and and also on a couple of days in between that, I'm doing a show with Jim White in Los Angeles, and then at
Mhm.
the end of the tour, one in New York, as a separate from the Saints thing.
Yeah,
But we have an album out called After the Flood, and that's so there's sort of two simultaneously ongoing projects there.
yeah,
Anyway, so from the States, the Saints will then go to the UK where we do. I can't remember how many shows, six, I
yep,
think, and then over to Stockholm and then to Berlin where we finish it.
yeah. Awesome. So do you find, so I find from my perspective and the community that I move through, the Saints are so revered as artists and the music that you guys put out, especially I guess the first two albums. And that first album, that first album, I remember
The
um
third one is worth having a look at too, if you like
yeah,
the first two. Completely different to the first two, but
yeah.
I really like it.
Yeah. I just remember an uncle of mine putting that first record on for me, and he'd already just like he sort of re introduced me to, and I know that sometimes, it's they re introduced me into punk in reverse, basically. So he introduced me to Dead Kennedys and all that 80s stuff first, then he goes, okay, let's go back.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are Australian and they're bloody amazing. And I was in love with that abrasive sound. Whenever I hear that guitar sound that you created for that particular album, that super abrasive sound, it makes me stand still. Um, Nobody else was doing that. What at the time made you think this is the sound for us?
What was the sound for me?
Yep.
It was what I wanted to hear,
Yeah.
basically. Um, it, as simple as that. And
Yep.
also I was conscious of not wanting to be exactly like the people that had influenced me.
Yep.
But I drew on a lot of that stuff, but it was important um, to me to not not focus on sounding like somebody else. Take
Mm.
what you need and then make it into your own kind of stew, I guess.
Yes, that's it. That's it. And and then you guys, I guess, sort of moved through that third album, and as you said, the sound changed. And so moving from that sound was it just like, oh, well, we're evolving as musicians now. I want to make these sound, I want to make it sound like this, or we've got more experience songwriting. So how did that all come?
Probably all those things. I mean, we
Yeah.
did the first album. Um, Basically, for me, was kind of. I mean, it was an introduction to other people, but
Hmm.
to me, it was kind of closing off that Brisbane era of
Yeah.
the band. By the time we moved out of Brisbane, started to experience not just the world, but the music world in particular.
Hmm.
You just sort of have to learn fairly quickly. Um, but by the time we did our second album, where the horns were introduced
Mm.
on Know Your Product at Australia, it it was partly because I could do it. Like we had, instead of having 2 days to record and mix the album, which we had for the first one, um, we had 2 weeks, I think, and it was such, and also access to. to horn players, which
Yep.
I wouldn't have had a clue how to organise anything like that in Brisbane. So,
Yeah.
and also you probably wouldn't have found anyone that would have worked with the band. So,
Mm,
um, yeah, it was just, once you start to see what you can be doing,
mm.
the temptation is there to do that. And the other thing was that, by the time the Saints' first album came out, in the 6 months or so after that, every fucker on the planet had a
It's it.
a punk band going.
Yeah.
It was just sort of like we'd been there, done it, and we did it better than a lot of other people. It was
Mm,
just time to move on. It was just there's too much to do, too much
yeah.
enjoyment to be had from making and discovering music.
Yeah. Um, and yeah, I'll relay an anecdote to you. I when I was living in New York, I bought a book about punk, just because I wanted some reading to do, and it was $2 at a shop. And I read about you guys doing Know Your Product and the horror in the punk community that you guys had put horns on what was perceived that it was going to be a punk album. And they're like, is this
Mm,
punk? And it's just like, and I thought, you know what? I've listened to that album so many times. I don't think it's punk. I think it's something else. I don't know what it is, but apparently it threw a little bit of fat in the fire that you guys were considered a punk band and you'd put horns on it because punk bands don't put horns on things. So,
yeah, well, I mean, one of the things that kind of unfortunately happened with punk was that by the time it became mainstream, it also became very kind of
homogenized.
constrained, and
Mm.
there was only certain things accepted, and
Kills
I
the
wasn't
genre,
going to
doesn't it?
going to have anything to do with that. It just
Mm.
seemed, and they were all sort of Johnny come latelys anyway. They where were
Mm.
they?
Yeah.
2 years ago, they were probably dancing to the Bay City Rollers or something. I mean,
Yep.
it 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 doesn't really warrant that much kind of analysis, really. But
No.
we kind of we went on and kind of did what we wanted to do. And I think we did it really well. I mean, the third album, Prehistoric Sounds, is sort of
Mm.
interesting because there was sort of riffs starting in the band at that stage, and I know Chris really didn't like those songs
Mm.
at the time of recording, and yet I think it's some of his best vocal performances. So even if when he
Mm.
didn't like it, he did a there was something great about it. So um, he changed his mind later. It took
Yeah.
decades.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, no. What can I say? Oh yes, the Saints, they were mighty fellows.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. So just wrapping up, because we've sort of moved through the Saints era, which is kind of what we need to do for our lovely Z People documentary that we're doing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so Z50, is there any bands on the lineup that you haven't seen that you're super keen to see?
Um,
I know.
probably all.
Yeah, probably all of
I,
them.
I, I actually don't get out to see bands all that much anymore, but not that I ever did, but
Yeah,
yeah, so all of them, yeah, okay,
yeah. Yeah, okay. But yeah, so we've run out of our 20 minutes. Thank you for talking to me today.
our
I've
pleasure.
really appreciated talking to you today. And I'll see you at Z50.
Okay, take care.
Thank you, Ed. Bye.
Bye bye.